Listening to Cooper Talk.
Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. I got to tell you something, people. I saw my guest when I was a sophomore in high school perform at the Spectrum with The Who in 1979, and then I saw him again when I was a freshman in college with The Who at JFK Stadium in Philadelphia, and he's had such a great career, from the Small Faces, the Faces, the Law, the Jones Gang. He's a big polo guy too, which I want to hear about because that's fascinating. And my guest is Kenney Jones. How you doing, Kenny?
Yeah, I'm doing great, apart from a slight sinus infection. So that's why I'm talking through my nose.
I want to talk about your career, but you got to tell me about the polo, because you don't hear about rock stars that are like, I know you own a polo ground, or how'd you get into this whole polo world?
Well, people ask me that all the time, and they say, how'd you get into polo? I say, well, if you turn the clock back years to the early 60s, right, and when we formed the Small Faces, it was Steve Marriott's fault that I got into polo, because basically we were rehearsing one day in a pub in the East End, and it was a boiling hot day like it is today in England. And he came in and he said, it's too warm it's such a lovely day out. I'll fix us up going horse riding in Epping Forest. So I said, great, I've never been on a horse before, so we all tried up to Epping Forest, and we got on these horses, and I stayed on, they fell off. I loved it. I like a duck to water.
So you just fell in love, and then how do you go from riding a horse to polo?
Well, what happens is I started show jumping and doing lots of different things, sporty stuff, and I was riding every day, fell in love with just riding. And later in the years, I sort of discovered polo, and that was it. I was hooked straight away. Then I ended up building my own polo club on the part of my land, and then I put polo fields in and invited Prince Charles down to play for Prince's Trust. It went on like that for years.
Now, you also played with some musicians, right? Some other musicians. You got them into polo?
Yeah, no, I got Mike Rutherford into riding. He'll never forgive me because he fell off and he's all smashed his teeth out. And also, Steve, what's his name? Oh, Stuart Copeland, sorry.
So, okay, I want to talk, now I've heard there's new Faces music in the midst. What's up with that?
The new Faces stuff is basically, just before the pandemic, we was coming up to our 50th anniversary. So we were planning to do something, but quite well, we didn't know. But we're going to sort of release an album of some sort and celebrate our 50th anniversary for the fans, you know. And sort of that got delayed, put on the back burner, because it went on for like 3 years. So we've still got to do it. So we decided to get together and do Woody and I came up with a load of tracks. I had a load of tracks and so did Ronnie. So we combined the two and we started working on them. Then we got Rod in and he sang on a few. And then we're still working on it a little bit now. So we've done about 12 tracks so far. But it's partly back catalogue stuff, partly some old songs we've done and some new stuff. So there'll be two separate albums, really. One on back catalogue stuff with some bonus tracks.
Now,
and another one which is a new track, new album.
Now, what's it like playing with those guys again? You know, it's been a long time. I mean, it must be, the magic must still be there, else you wouldn't be doing it. But, I mean, what is it like when you're older, you're more mature, your songwriting has all changed? What is it like?
It's just like having a party again. I have to ask my liver, what's it like? No, Rod said to me, you haven't given up drinking, have you, Kenny? I said, no. He went, thank God for that. So Ronnie and I, Rod and I, I like a drink now and again. It's never bothered me at all. I've not got a problem with it. The only problem I've got with drinking is if I can't get hold of any. But Ronnie gave up drinking over 8 years ago now, along with other stuff. I'm so proud of him because he really stuck to his guns, and he needed to. He needed to get clean, you know. So that's the shape of things. So Woody now it's in better shape than Rod and I. What a turnaround.
Is it fun though? I mean, is it magical? Like feeling that like back from when is it like reliving your youth somewhat because
it's great because basically, look, I mean, we every year we get together like 3 or 4 times a year anyway, especially at Christmas. So we cause havoc wherever we go, and it's great seeing each other. It's like going back in time. It's like time never moved on, you know. So we have a great time being with each other, a bit fooling around and having a great time and talking about things. So it's kind of, we've never sort of not seen each other. So it's not like we're just getting together after all these years. We've been seeing each other lots during the years. But to actually get in the studio again is quite exciting.
Now, how did your career start? You're a legendary drummer. You've been with, these bands. You're a Hall of Famer. My older brother played drums, and I remember I used to hate it because my parents set it up in the den, and I would be trying to watch TV, and he'd be practicing. Finally, I moved him to the basement, but the problem is our basement was flooded, so they took the ping pong table down to elevate my brother's drums, so I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't play ping pong, so I was pissed at the drums. But my brother was a really good drummer. When did you start playing the drums?
Well, it goes back many years when I was a little boy. Growing up in the East End of London, and one of my uncles was a band leader. He couldn't play a note of music, by the way. He used to lead the band around the streets of London, the Catholic bands, and he was kind of had a big feather hat, like white feathers, and a big mace, and he'd go left, right, and throw the mace in the air. And behind him was the band. And behind him directly was a row of side drummers. So I used to walk alongside the side drummers when I was like 6 or 7, all the way through, and then I pretending I was one of the side drummers, which was great fun. Then I used to rush back to my father's. My father was a bit of a part-time carpenter, so I used to rush back to my father's shed, and he had a tin box of nails. So I used to throw the nails out, tip the box upside down, and get 2 bits of firewood to start playing it. So that's how I go to drumming.
So when do you start getting on and playing with a kit? I mean, it's something to go from playing with nails. When did you start getting...
Well, what happened was, in the East End when I was growing up as a young kid, about 12 years old, I remember seeing this banjo, which is for sale, because my mate said to me, we should form a skiffle group. I said, what's a skiffle group? He said, well, you get a tea chest and you get a broom handle, stick it in one side, and then a piece of string and put it to the other corner and plonk it like that, put it tight, and that makes the sound of a bass. I went, okay, great. Then he said you get your grandmother's washboard, which we had in the East End just after the war. You get the washboard, and you get your grandmother's thimbles from his sewing kit, put them on your fingers, and start scraping up and down. I thought the guy was nuts, and he described all this. But he said, there's a skiffle group on TV tonight. So we went, that evening we watched waiting for the TV show to start. And it was Lonnie Donegan came on, singing Rock on the Line. And I fell in love with the banjo. I loved the sound of it, loved the way he played it, loved the song, Rock on the Line. And so I remember, next day, we went up to this pawn shop in the East End of London, and it was at this banjo has been in the window for like 3 months. We get there, and the banjo had gone. So I said to the guy, where's the banjo? He said, it's gone. He said, no, the guy, it's a pawn shop. It's coming, he's paid for it, it's gone. He's paid for it, it's gone. So we'll get it back. He said, I can't get it back. He said, so we left there, and my mate said to me on the way back, he said, you're quite upset about that, aren't you? I said, yeah, I love the sound of the banjo. And he said, well, my mate's got a drum kit. Shall I get him to bring it over this afternoon? I said, yeah, great. So later on that day, this knock on my door, and his mate brought this, what I thought was a drum kit. It wasn't. It turned out to be a floor tom-tom, half a bass drum, 2 sticks, one of them which was broken off. And we spent most of the afternoon trying to glue these sticks together before super glue, anything like that, and it never worked. So I ended up playing on these bits of drums with 1.5 sticks. You know, and so that's how I got into it. And then I thought I've got to get a proper drum kit. So my cousin told me about a shop in the East End called the J60s. It's right near where, before I met Ronnie Lane. Ronnie Lane bought his guitar there, and so I went and bought this drum kit. And I found the receipt for it last year.
How much was it?
£64, 13 shillings and twopence. An old money.
So you get the drum kit. Now, how do you start a band? Because you're a long way from the plucker or whatever you call it, and the washboard. How's your first band get started?
Well, what happened was I got the drum kit. So cutting a long story short, I was nicking £10 out of my mother's purse to pay for the I purchased. I'll pay it back later, don't worry. So I heard about this jazz band that were playing locally in a local pub. So I went off to see them. They played every Friday. By this time, I've been playing for a couple of months, teaching myself in the mornings and lunchtimes and in the evening. And I went up to this pub and I I sat in front of this drummer, whose name was Roy. And he had a microphone in front of him, so like an old wrestler. You remember the old square ones? Came right through between his legs and the snare drum. And he had his arms out around it like that and started singing. I thought, I've never seen this singing drummer. So I watched him play, and then he'd play like this. He'd play, hang on, take my glasses off. He'd play, boom, cha, boom, cha, 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 and they go. Every time he did the fill, he'd blink his eyes, all the way around. And because it's infectious, I didn't realise it was infectious. So when he had a break, he came over to me and he said, "You taking the piss out of me?" I said, What are you talking about? He said, "Why'd you keep blinking at me?" I said, "Well, go." I said, "Because you blink." I said, "That's probably why I'm blinking." He said, "No, I don't." I went, "Oh, good." So we got to know each other very quickly. For a few weeks passed, and I went and went up to watch him again. And then he said, "Right, we've got a very special drummer going to get on play it tonight. So we've got a young drummer going to play." I thought, great, I can see another drummer play it. Fantastic. And he introduced me. I went, what? So I found myself walking on stage, looking at these guys. It was a jazz band. And luckily, I know one of the records I was learning to play drums on was 12 Street Rag. So I do, so I kind of had the jazz beat in my soul. So the guys looked at me, and when I sat down, they looked like three big giants, like massive. And I thought, God. And he said, "Right, okay, ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. It sounded like to me at that time, 1, 2. So everything went into slow motion. Then all of a sudden I found myself playing, and it was like breaking all ties with the earth, like the umbilical cord. I was just having a ball. I've never played with a band, in a band before in my life. No, I just loved it so much. It was great. That's how I got into band. And afterwards, I'm sitting there shaking afterwards, trying to drink my half a lager and pretending I was old enough to drink. Spilling the beer everywhere, and I was shaking so much. And this guy comes up and he said, the barman, he said, "Kenny, that was really, really good. I really liked it." He said, "Are you in the band?" I said, "No, I'm forming one now." He said, "Well, my brother's just bought a guitar. Been playing it for a couple of weeks now. Should I bring him down to meet you?" I said, "Yeah." So the next week went past. The doors opened in this pub, and this guy, the barman walks in, and behind him was this guy, and it was his brother, and it was Ronnie Lane. And so Ronnie, I started laughing at him because he wore a grey suit and it's a tie. He looked really smart, lovely. But every time he talked, his tie was so big, the tie would stay there and he'd turn his head like that. So I started laughing at him straight away. So anyway, so we got together and so we come over to my place and we'd play with his amp and we'd play. Then I'd get on a bus and take parts of my drums on a bus to where he lived. And we went on, did that for a few weeks, and we formed a band called The Outcasts. And we got a few gigs. And Ronnie Lane said to me one day, I said, I don't really want to play lead guitar anymore, because Ronnie used to play like this. He used to play, solo, like do Chuck Berry sort of riff, and they go, so kind of trying to play lead guitar. So he said, no, I want to play bass. I said, great, let's go to the shop where I bought my drum kit by chance, and you bought your guitar, see what they've got. So this one Saturday morning, Ronnie and I went up there, and there's all these drums set up and bits and bobs, and this young guy came up to us, really cocky, quite helpful, and said, what do you want? I said, he wants to buy a bass. He said, oh, come with me, I'll show you a bass. Yeah. So out of the corner of my eye, I saw a drum kit. I thought, oh, so I sat behind it, and I started to play it while these guys were messing about with basses. Some like this, starting to play. Saturday morning, the shop's really busy. So we're now causing havoc now, so Ronnie Lane started joining me, and this other guy started to play on guitar, and that was Steve Marriott. So we invited Steve to our gig with the Outcasts that night, and we took him to the gig, and we asked him to sing, and he said, yeah, come and join me. So he ended up, Steve jumped on the top of the piano, jumped on the keys, started playing the keys with his feet and doing Great Balls of Fire, stuff like that, and so went down a stormy lovely, and of course the landlord didn't like his piano being broken up, his old upright, so he kind of stopped us and threw us out of the pub. So the rest of the band wouldn't talk to us, so they all went off, and it's over Tower Bridge in the East End of London, where Michael Caine was from, see, so it's got probably a regular there, and so we're sitting outside the pub on Ronnie's guitar case, my drum case, sitting there, and the three of us looked at each other, burst out laughing, and I swear to God, that was the birth of the Small Faces.
Now, once you guys put together, how did you start becoming popular? I mean, it's like, I always laugh now because, someone can put something on social media and it can get thousands of likes. But back then, you had to do the hard work. You had to play gigs. How did you guys get to the point of popularity? Did it take you a while? I mean, what was your track?
Well, it's like a whirlwind hit us, because it really happened quite quickly. I mean, we had a few gigs. We were going up and down England in an old van trying to get gigs, and one of the gigs we tried to get, we were starving. We broke down in Sheffield, and we met this guy. So we said to this young girl, is there any clubs around? He said, yeah, it's one called the Mojo. So we knocked on the door, and this guy opened the door, and he said, well, we'll play for nothing. We're starving. We just want to eat some food. We'll play for nothing. And that guy was Peter Stringfellow. Peter Stringfellow, and opened up Stringfellow's nightclub in quite popular. And also, later on we got to know him quite well, because shortly after that, we built up a following in a club called the London Cavern in just off Leicester Square, and we built up this following over a period of about sort of 6 weeks. So by that time, the word had got around to the music industry, which was fairly small in those days. So we went one of these gigs we were playing, and then suddenly this guy comes up to us. His name was Patrick Meehan, and he said, I work for Don Arden. He said, I'm Don Arden's partner. He said, Don Arden's a big manager, and he said, he wants you to come up and talk to him. He wants to, I think, managing you. He said, no, it's all right, mate. We don't want to know about that sort of shit. We're just playing for fun. So next day we had a chat, and we went up there to his office, and we met with Don Arden. Don Arden was like a big teddy bear. He thought he was a really a hood, a gangster. No way he was a gangster. On my side of the family, they were gangsters, but not his side. So he pretended he was like one of those. And he said I was an opera singer as well. So he started singing, oh. So anyway, he said, look, I'm going to sign you boys. I love the look of you. I love your sound. But he said, I can give you a deal. He said, I'll give you a wage, or I'll give you a percentage of the records and stuff like that. So we said, well, we need to have a chat. So we went outside, came back, and we had a chat. And he said, right, have you thought about it? He said, yes. I said, we want both. So we want a wage and we want a percentage of the royalties. Don't forget, we're only young kids. I mean, I was only, well, I was just 15. And Steve was 1 year older than me. Ronnie was 2 years older than me. And we had this other guy in the band called Jimmy Winston. His real name was Jimmy Langworth. His mum and dad had a pub, so we used to rehearse in there. That's where we went off horse riding, turning the clock back. So anyway, so we all signed on the dotted line. And before he said, "I've got this guy called Ian Samuel. You should get together with him." And Ian was an original member of the Shadows years ago. So we got together with Ian in the IBC studios in London, Portland Place, and we were just playing away. And he said, "I've got this song called 'What You Gonna Do About It.'" He'd written it with Mort Schumann. So he said, "Right, okay, let's see if we can do it." And the engineer in IBC studios at that time, so I go have a drink of water. None other than Kenney Jones. And Glenn, we got along with Glenn straight away. So we recorded this song called "What You Gonna Do About It." Before we know it was I don't know, it's happened so quick. we recorded 2 tracks, A and B side, and we had a hit record. It was like 14 in the charts straight away.
So you're 15. I mean, it's like you can't even get into pubs. I mean, what's that like to be 15?
I just said it happened like a tornado. Boom, and there you are. It's funny enough, I'm still in that tornado because here I am now going, fuck, what's happened?
So the small faces, you start getting popular. So how are you guys working together as a band? Because 15, 16, 17, that's ages, we go through a lot of shit. I mean, any males, we change. I mean, what was it like for you guys dealing with success at such a young age?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was 15 when we released it. I was 16 when we had the record going up the charts. So all I remember was just leaving school. So I never looked back. I mean, some people ask me, say, when did you leave home? I said, well, I left home when I formed the band, basically. I've never been back since.
So the small faces are popular. And what happened with you guys? Did you just grow out of each other because you were getting older and you wanted different views, or what happened?
I tell you what, it was when we did our sort of biographies of how many tracks we'd done over the years, and I was astounded. I couldn't believe how many songs we'd actually recorded in such a short time, because we were only together for about 4.5 years. Hundreds of songs, and so I think, to be honest, by this time we'd gone through 2 record labels, Decca, and then we went with Andrew Alderman on Immediate Records, where we made a big breakthrough, and I used to do sessions. So anything I learned, I went to play with big bands as well and doing sessions. So all these big fills, I ended up taking them back to the band. And so by the time we did Here Come the Nice and Green Circles, we had big fills in it, and Ogden's Not Gone Flake, I kind of was branching out as a drummer, We're all actually getting better and better individually. So until we did Ogden's Not Gone Flake, and when we finished Ogden's Not Gone Flake, we thought, okay, I think in the back of all our minds was, how bloody hell are we going to follow this? So, Steve, also, don't forget, all the way through this, we had nothing else but screaming fans, like Beatlemania, it's like Small Faces Mania. So we couldn't hear ourselves play when we did any gigs. It's kind of nuts. I mean, you get over the adulation, you think it's got quite nice at first, then it really gets on your nerves. So I think it got to Steve. We could never lose this teeny bopper image until one day, Crystal Palace was one of our gigs at Christmas. Steve just threw his guitar down and said, I've had enough of this. Walked off stage. And that was it, left us there on our own. And we were right in the middle of the tour, which we ended up finishing But the thing is, Steve, it got to Steve. I mean, it got to us all, but he didn't have to throw his guitar down and walk off stage and do that, but he did.
So okay, so you guys, you're done with it. So then how do the Faces come about? Because once again, there became a huge group. I mean, what was your musical, what direction were you looking in when you started the Faces? I'm sure you wanted to get away from that teeny bopper image because I'm sure, as you said, you can't hear yourself play. There's everyone screaming. They're not really appreciating you as much as you should be appreciated. So when you put the Faces together, did you have a goal of what you were going to do?
Well, we didn't. The Faces happened by accident because basically, being on Immediate Records and Andrew Older managing the Stones, of course, we got to know Keith and Mick and the Stones and Charlie and everybody. And of course, they had a warehouse in Bermondsey, not far from the pub we got thrown out of, funny enough. And he said, well, look, we've got a little soundproof room down there. Why don't you get together and just use it till you know what you're doing? And so the Stones were really, really generous with us. So great mates. So every week we rehearsed down this in Bermondsey Street in an old warehouse where the Stones kept all their equipment. So after a while, we were just jamming away, and suddenly Ronnie Lane brought his new next door neighbour down. That was Ronnie Wood. So we're sitting there, we're playing and jamming away again. So, and I'm, you see, drummers have the best seat in the house, and sitting there, and also you can hear any mistake and what's going on. So you got Woody. He was a great bass player. I mean, he was a wonderful bass player with the Beck group. So I knew all the band. But he didn't want to play bass anymore. It's a bit like Ronnie Lane. It's one of those again. I want to play guitar, reverse psychology. So Woody's playing away, and this went on for a couple of weeks, and then until Ronnie Wood brought down his best mate, which happened to be Rod Stewart. Rod was only not in the band. He came down just to have a bit of fun. And so he sat on the amps, sat on the flight cases, and just watched us jam away. And then we had a couple of breaks during the evening. So there's a pub called the Bermondsey Arms in Bermondsey Street, and we went up the pub and had a drink or two. So this turned into a regular occurrence, So then one day I said, "Well, it's all very well jamming, but we got to try and sing." And of course Ronnie, I knew what Ronnie Lane's voice was like. It was fantastic, wonderful voice. But we all missed that powerful voice of Steve Marriott. What he's saying, Max saying, I went, yeah. All of a sudden I'm looking on the side, and I see Rod all the time. I knew what a great singer he was. So we went, one of these breaks, we went up the pub, and I said, put me arm around Rod, and I did an Adam Faith on him. Fancy a drink? So we ran the other bar, and I said, do you fancy joining the band? He said, do you think that the other band, the rest of the guys would let me? I said, of course they will. So I went that evening. Alvin Lee, by chance, was having a party, like a few drinks and a bit of ash and all that shit, around at his Muse house at the back of Harley Street. So I said to the rest of the guys, can I have a word? So I went upstairs, I said, a private word. So I've asked Rod to join the band. Oh, we don't want another prima donna in the band. We don't want another one going to walk out. And I said, oh, no, shit. So I kind of, for me, in the back of my mind, I was saying, I knew it's the difference between success and failure, personally, because as much as Ronnie Lane's voice was great and everyone's voice was good, I knew Rod's voice was great. So I dug my heels in and I won. I held it out. So that's how we formed the Faces. We were jamming around the rest of the time. Rob was singing, great, so we were having great. So, and Art Wood, Ronnie Lane's brother, got us a couple of gigs in the colleges years ago. And we said, oh, we don't have a name. So we're looking down at this bowl of fruit. so there was a big melon in the fruit bowl. So so we're saying that melon's not saying much, is it? So it's a quiet melon. So we could call ourselves the Quiet Melon. fucking stupid name. Right, no. So we had a good laugh with that. So anyway, we ended up, I found this guy called Billy Gaff, who said, I met him in the Speakeasy Club, and he said, it's a bit gay, you know, one of those. And he said, oh, I can get you out of your contract with the media. I said, oh, if you can, great. I said, then next week I got the boys down, Rod Wood and everyone. I said, look, this is a bit, he can get us out of our contract. Not realising later on that media went bust, so that's why I'm not. So we were already out of the bloody contract. But anyway, we got to know Billy, and Billy got us a few more gigs, and so that's how we met Billy Gaff, and Billy Gaff became our manager.
Now, how'd you go from Melon to Faces?
Well, what happened was, we got a deal with Warner Brothers, and so the contract, they went up there to sign it, and I noticed in it said Small Faces on it as the name of the band. So I said, hold on, man, we're not the Small Faces, we're nothing like that. We're completely different band. We don't play any Small Faces stuff, and that's it. But basically, they turned around and, in a nutshell, they said, well, if you don't sign it as a Small Face, you can't have this money, this advance. So fuck it. so we agreed that we would call ourselves the Small Faces, and the name of the album was called First Step. He said, but thereafter we're going to be called Faces, because there's nothing small about us. We've got to drop it small. Because for a start, Rod and Ronnie were a little bit taller than the rest of us. Well, a lot taller.
So what is it like when you start getting success with the Faces? What's the difference from the success of the Small Faces? Because as you said, it must have been a completely different crowd and more maybe musical appreciation.
It was a huge difference, because basically, you know, you left one band which is teeny bopper screaming God knows what. Also, we were playing in America as well, so the Small Faces never went to America, so we found ourselves in America, treading the boards and playing in little clubs and stuff. And we did it the hard way in America. So it was word of mouth in America, because we play one club in New York. By the time we got to Boston, they'd already heard of us. So our reputation preceded us, and we ended up doing this across everywhere. I mean, we got to Detroit, where I think we really ran the East Town Theatre. People loved us, and we used to love going to Detroit. So in the end, we became bigger and bigger and bigger. And so we had a record out, Faces album, and then Rod decided, and we're cutting a long story short now, Rod had released on his solo stuff, Maggie May. So we're now playing Maggie May, and then the rest of the Faces songs and stuff like that. So in the end, we were kind of doing it. It was a mixture of the two, a bit of Rod, a bit of Faces in it. So we ended up becoming a massive stadium band, which was fantastic. I mean, one time I think we was bigger than the Stones at one point.
And you're still a young guy. I mean, how is that changing your life? I mean, you probably don't have a lot of anonymity because people know you. I mean, now you're going back to, it's not teeny bopper, but it's older people, a little bit older, who are all knowing you because you're playing stadiums. I mean, how does that affect you? I mean, were you partying a lot, or what were you doing?
Well, it was kind of, you got meant to be. So, I mean, you get used to it, and you become a stadium band, so you think different, you play slightly different, you don't get so technical, because the recording equipment in the early days just wasn't there. So you simplify a lot of things just to, to get the music across. But it was fantastic to play these places.
Now, what happened with the Faces then? When did you guys decide to end it? Was it because Rod's solo career was getting too big, or what happened?
Well, no, it wasn't that. It was the fact that Woody said, I could be quite friends with Mick Mick Jagger at the time, because we all were. You know, he said Mick Taylor's left the Stones. He said, but they've asked me if I can fill in while they find another guitarist. We said, no, Ronnie, it's fine. Yeah, go and do it. You know, but you keep yourself together because our tour starts when their tour starts. Our tour starts in Florida. And when Ronnie came back, we all met up in Florida, in Miami, and we were staying in that house, Ocean. Was it 121 Ocean Boulevard? Eric Clapton's album. That particular house. So we all rehearsing now, and then, but Woody came back, see, the Faces and the Stones were pretty much the same sort of vibe, you know. The way we dressed, the way we talked, the way we played music. But Woody came back a little slightly different. He came back more like a Stone than the Face. And Rod and I got to talking there, sitting there on the beach, and I said we kind of thought, the writing's on the wall here. So we agreed to start a band, Rod and I.
So
we put a band together, and we had Billy Peake on guitar, you know, great Chuck Berry riffs, and Phil Chen on bass, Gary Grange on lead guitar, and it's a pretty good band. Now, because by this time we knew that Ronnie was joining the Stones. We just knew it. So we did that, and I just bowled out at the last minute. I said, no, I can't do this. I can't be seen as sort of starting a backing band and being not a backing band, but it was all equal. But I just couldn't. I just felt not right about it. So I said, look, Ron, I can't do this. I said, oh, sorry. And everybody understood. And that was it. So he went off and started doing his solo stuff with the same band, basically. I think they got Carmen Appice in to play.
So, how does the Who come about? Because that's when I still remember seeing it was. I believe it was your first tour. It was it was '79, and it was the Spectrum. And I know the Cincinnati tragedy had happened a week before the Spectrum. You played 2 nights in the Spectrum. And how did it come about that you joined the Who? Because that was one of my first concerts, and I saw you on the drum kit, which was amazing. Because I was like, now talking to you, I'm like, holy crap! I mean, I think my first concert was Yes, and the Who was my second concert, and it was just timing. But how did you end up in the Who?
Long story. Going back again to the 60s and the Small Faces. And the Who used to tour a lot to get together. And we toured Australia, New Zealand, and then kind of long story short again, because I'll be here forever. You know, it was. I was really good friends with the Who, and I used to do demo. Pete and I used to play at his house. I backed onto the Thames. And I used to go up there and play on the drums with them, doing these little demos and stuff. And whilst I was in the Faces, they asked me if I'd play on Tommy, the soundtrack of Tommy. So I said, yeah, no problem. So I played on the soundtrack of Tommy. But whilst I was still in the Faces. So it's kind of, in those days, there was nothing strange about it, because basically it was like being in one great big band, because there's only a few, half a dozen, or a dozen sort of big bands around at that time. Very small music industry was. So I thought nothing more of it, and so I started forming a band. Once the Faces had finished, I started forming a band with Glyn Johns. We were putting together, we had a record deal with Atlantic Records. So we put together this, what we call half English, half American band, which was fantastic. Great little band. Tim Rennick, guitarist, was in it as well. My drum roadie at the time, it's a guy called Bill Harrison. He used to look after Keith's stuff as well. And so we kind of shared him in a sense as a drum roadie. One day, Bill said to me, "You're going to get the call." I said, "What call?" He said, "Well," he said, "Well, Keith's dead now." I said, "I know." I said, "Well, I've already signed a band, He said, "Well, So anyway, I ended up getting a call from Bill Kirbystead, the Who's manager. And he said, "Kenny, I'll come straight to the point. I'll never get these words. I mean, I can't make this up. You remember these things? I'll come straight to the point. The Who have got together. They still want to stay together as a band, and they want you to join the band and not considering anyone else." So, "Well, Bill, that's very flattering. So very nice." So I said, "But I can't." He went, "What?" So I said, "Look," he said, "Well, Pete," I said, "Well, I told Bill I'm already forming a band with Kenney Jones, the producer." I said, "But, he said, "Well, Pete's coming into the office later on today. Well, why don't you come and see him?" I said, "Yeah, I love him more. I'm great with Pete." So we went up to his office in Wardour Street. It was only in Soho. And I said, so we ended up sitting there talking about the good old days, about touring in the Small Faces and the Faces Small Faces and the Who, touring all over the place. We had a great laugh, and then suddenly Pete just went, "You've got to join the band. You're one of us." So he said, "You're mod, all that." He said, "You've got to join us." I said, "Well," look, I told him all about the band. I said, "Look, I feel pretty bad. We've got the band together. It's a really good band. And funny enough, they're over here at the moment for a week rehearsing." So he said, I said, "Look, on the way home, I'll go and have a word with the band." And I said, "And see what happens." So on the way home, I stopped at, I said to everybody there, I said, "Look, guys, I've just been asked to join the Who." And they straight away went, "You've got to join the band. You've got to do it, Kenny. You've got." So I could begin the seal of approval by a band I was forming. I think they were trying to get rid of me.
So what is it like when you join them? They're the Who. I mean, and you have the success with the Faces, but you become all of a sudden, and you're taking Keith's place. So, it's like anything. What's it like when you take, because Keith was such a larger-than-life figure.
Absolutely, completely different drummer to me. And I tell you, and that's what I said in our meeting. I said, "Look, should I end up joining the band?" I said, "There's no way I'm going to be copying Keith Moon." I said, because Mooney was, apart from being a great mate and a great player in his own right, and in his different, everyone sort of has their own style. It's very important. Every drummer, every great drummer has their own style. And so a unique way of playing. But I said, there's no way. I said certain things that I like Keith's feels on certain things that I do those, and because I want to do them. I said, but other than that, there's no way. I said, I'm a straighter drummer. I'm not really. And even Pete said, "Look," he said when Keith played, he said he'd go all out and all over the place and go in and out of time. He said, but he always come back in time. You never know where he'd go. So we all kind of followed him. I said, "Go." I said, "So let's get that straight. I'm not actually copying Keith." That's exactly what I said. I can give you me, and that's it. So that's what I did. I put me there.
So I want to ask you, the Who, and I love stories about Live Aid, because I live 10 minutes from Philadelphia, and I'm so still pissed I missed the concert. But it was one of those times that they showed it on TV. Like, you didn't see concerts on TV. Tell me about Live Aid. How was it for you? I mean, because it was such a big event, and everyone just says there was a certain magic in the air. Tell me what it was like for you guys.
Well, we had a call from Bob Geldof, who said he was doing this charity gig. He said we'd like to have a chat with us. So we ended up meeting him. But it's a little wine bar by the side of the London Palladium. And we went down there. By this time, don't forget, we were all drinking there. So, but don't forget, when I joined the Who, it was chaos from this day one, because I was going through a divorce. John Armatrading was going through a divorce, and so was Pete Townsend. So we're all hitting the bottle except Roger. I was just like, oh, fucking hell. So anyway, so we ended up this years later. you know, Live Aid now. So Bob Geldof told us about this gig he was doing. He did it like us to do it. So everyone agreed to do it. Yeah, no problem. And he said we only had to play for like half an hour, 20 minutes or whatever. So we agreed to do it, and that's how we did Live Aid. I mean, I'll never forget Live Aid. You know, by this time, I bought a couple of. I had a few bob in my pocket, and I bought a couple of toys. One of them was a Rolls Royce and a helicopter. And the reason I got into helicopters, funny enough, is because Roger, funny enough, had bought a helicopter way before when he had Shepperton Studios, and his pilot took us up for a ride round Winnock, and I just loved it, you know. But then I forgot put that to bed. I went to one side. Then I got bumped into it for another friend of mine who just happened to be a helicopter pilot. I said, funny enough, yeah, so something I'd like to do. So I ended up learning how to fly in 1982. 83. So I got my license. I learned an old Bell 47, the mash one, the big Papa. Then I progressed to the Jet Ranger and the Squirrel. I was converting to the Squirrel. And so I remember we had to be at Live Aid, right, at 9 o'clock in the morning. So I decided, I lived outside London. So I flew into Battersea Heliport, landed the helicopter, stopped it there, and I then get into Live Aid 1. There are two helicopters, Live Aid 1 and Live Aid 2. And they were quite big helicopters, so you had to take off, go to the takeoffs backwards like that. So you pull him back like to get a transitional thrust, big time. So one of the pilots said to me, so would you like to sit in a co-pilot seat and co-pilot the helicopter? I said, yeah. In those days, if you went a co-pilot in any helicopter, you could put it in your log, your pilot's log.
Okay.
So I got that in my log. So we took off. We flew to Wembley Stadium. We had to land in an old cricket ground next door because you couldn't land in the stadium. And so then I had my car, my Rolls Royce, meet me. So I stepped out of this helicopter and into this Rolls Royce, went to the stadium across the road, and then did the old. If you look on, funny enough, if you start Live Aid, you see me, Roger Taylor, and everybody involved in Prince Charles and Lady Diana. Opening the stadium and whatever, and even in the Queen film, you see that's the actual footage is right there. It makes me laugh every time I see it. So then what I did was did everything in reverse. I said, okay, so we got over the opening ceremony, get back in the car, get to the other big helicopters to do it, take off, and I went back to the helicopter, get my helicopter, went back home where I used to live, just outside London, and watched it on TV.
What was it? Was there a certain energy though, like backstage? I mean, did it feel?
Oh yeah, well, I didn't spend. Yeah, I didn't want to spend all day there because you ain't around because it's just like another gig, you know. And it was like they had the Hard Rock Cafe there, you know, backstage and that sort of thing. But it was a long day. It would have been a long day. So we were on about. I can't remember what time we were on about. Sort of 4 o'clock. It's like 3 or 4 o'clock. So what I did was I watched it on TV and I took off for my garden and about an hour before we were going to play. I got there an hour before and did it in reverse and whatever. And I took a pilot with me to take the helicopter back. And that was it. So, and then my car was still there, so at the end of the day I could get home somehow.
Now,
so it's one of those real rock star sort of decadent, horrible things to do, and I did it. So, but you know what? I did it. It's fun.
Now, with the Who, you were on a few albums, and I love the song "Eminent Front." And were you what was the recording of that like? I mean, the beginning's got the keyboard, but Did you ever say when you bring the drum tracks in, or how did that work?
Well, we did it at Glenn Johns' house. He had a private studio in his house, and we did the Eminence on there. Pete came up with a song and the riff, and so it was just like, it's a great song. It's a little turn in there. It's a great groove, you see. Once you get in a great groove, once you've got a great song, a great tune, you can actually, it becomes part of you. Once it's part of you, you play great to it. So, and that's it. So, and like You Bet, it's another great song. So and I just felt, and one of the other songs which I wish the Who would have done was when Pete asked me to do it on his solo album, and he played Rough Boys. I said to Pete at the time, Rough Boys is a Who song. He went, no, it's not. so well, I think it is. And I said, it's great. He said, no, it's not. I still, to this day, think it would have been a great song. Rough Boys is a great title and a great upbeat song. Very Who-y. So I wish we could have done that. So
what happened with the Who? You played for a while. I mean, is it something that you grow out of it, or did you want to go in directions?
No,
because
basically, everyone was sort of, we were not touring and doing whatever, so long gaps in between everything, and then I could see that the Who were not sure about what they were going to do. So by this time, I did the arms store for Ronnie Lane to raise money for multiple sclerosis, and on that tour was me, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, you name it, they're on it. Bill Wyman and me and Charlie Watts playing drums, and Ray Cooper sitting in the middle of us. And we had a great. I'm just raising money, and we started America. Did a few gigs for the Princess Trust in Albert Hall, and then we just decided to take it to America to raise even more money on a little tour there. So we did that. Paul. Oh God, my name. I'm going to take a step. I can't talk now. My name. No. Paul Rogers. Hang on, let me have a step. Paul Rogers was singing on the tour as well. Paul and I already knew Paul from way back then, but we got together and talked about a lot more. Got to know each other quite well. And I bumped into him again after the tour in a club in London, and he said, "Oh, just a minute, I want to see you." I said, "What's up, Paul?" He said, "I think we should start a band." I said, "Great." So that's how it started with the Law. So by this time we recorded some songs. And it was great stuff, So we got a record deal with. I'd moved on by then, up in my head, Who were kind of doing different things. Pete was doing his solo album, Roger was doing this, lots of stuff, and acting. And I wasn't sure whether they were going to stay together or not. So I was enjoying working with Paul Rogers. So let's put it that way.
So after that, you guys did one album, but then you formed the Jones Gang, and now you guys are doing a concert in July. Am I right?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, it's called Guildfest. Now it used to take place in Guildford, but the borough council just after the pandemic said they didn't want to do that Guildfest there anymore. They've been doing it for years. So he came to me and my club because we got a license to do outdoor gigs and whatever. We have 200 acres there. We do concerts ourselves. So he said, "Would you do it here?" I said, "Yeah, great, come in." So that's how we get. So providing my band can play on the bill.
So you've been in the business. You've been in these great groups. I want to ask you before we go, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What was that like? As a musician. Because there's people saying, "Oh, well, Dolly Parton shouldn't be in there," or this. People are arguing. But as someone who's part of it, is that a huge honor? And what was the ceremony like?
Yes, I didn't realise how much of a huge honour it was, because basically, I mean, it's like being knighted in this country. The same sort of feeling in America when you're inducted into the Rock Hall of Fame. It's the people that induct you, they vote for you, and I just felt fantastic because we were inducted twice in the same time, one for the small faces and one for the faces. So I felt really proud of myself, and I was proud of all my band members, Steve Nair and Steve and Ronnie couldn't be there, but luckily Mac was still alive then. So I ended up taking Steve Marritt's daughter there, and so when they got to that bit where Small Faces received their bit of award, I got Molly, Steve's daughter, to receive it, which was lovely. And so it's just a very special time.
Now, do you still talk to the guys in the Who?
Oh yeah. I mean, I played with the guys. I mean, Pete and Roger came to me. I called them up because I had prostate cancer, and I decided to raise a lot of money and awareness for, well, not so much the money, but the awareness to get people to go and check their prostate out, because it's a terrible cancer. It creeps up on you, and it can be stopped. So I called up Bill Kirby. I said, look, can you ask Pete and Roger if they'd like to do this concert with me? I said, because raising money for prostate cancer. And Bill said, no, came out straight away. He said, yeah, no, boys would love to do it. So Pete and Roger turned up, and we ended up doing one of the concerts. And they said, we don't need to rehearse. Kenny knows the songs. Great.
Now, when do you have a date of when the Faces album will be coming out? Is there any?
No, not really, because I wish I could say tomorrow, but I can't, because we're still working. Because what's got in the way, everyone's got a backlog of work. Gigs have been cancelled because of the pandemic. So right now, Woody has been on tour with. We was working on it, and suddenly we had to stop because Stones had to go and do a European tour to get that out of the way again, and that was backing up. And so now they're doing the English side, the London gigs or the England gigs, and that's going to end soon. And at the same time, Rod had to do Vegas and things that they were backing up there. Those things. So that's all going to come to an end slowly as the summer progresses. Then I think we're going to go back in the studio and we start recording a few songs. So when it's finished is the answer to that.
One final question. Well, a request. Tell me one great rock and roll story. God,
I knew you were going to ask me that.
I need to hear one.
Well, Keith Moon's in all of them.
Well, tell me a good one. Tell me one with you and Keith.
Well, when the Who and the Small Faces used to tour, right, I ended up, by my bad luck, having the room next door to Keith Moon. And so, when you get in your room, you check it out. You got one of those like desks along the wall, and you've got a plug on there, so, whatever. So, and a drawer. And I thought, okay, so I'm sitting on this sofa, and all of a sudden I could hear this noise coming from underneath this, it'd be the desk part of this long thing. It's getting louder and louder, it's scratching on the wall. I thought, God, I've got mice in there and stuff. I can't believe it. So all of a sudden it's getting louder and louder. And suddenly I get down on my knees and looking at the wall, and then suddenly the wall started to move underneath this desk thing. So it started going bang, bang. Like it's like tearing apart, So and then suddenly it went bang, a big hole in it, and Keith Moon stuck his head through it and said, "Let's come to the bar."
Now that's a story. Kenny, I want to thank you. People, go to Kenny's website, KenneyJones.com. It's KENNEY Jones.com. It's great. You can find his whole history. There's a shop. It's just wonderful. And check out all the music from the Small Faces, the Faces, the Who. When the new album comes out, please check that out. Go to my website, CooperTalk.net. You can find over 900 episodes. Email me, Cooper, CooperTalk.net. Twitter, I'm at CooperTalk. Remember, I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guest. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you guys next time.
Let's plug that as well.